when he returned to town for the people who were preparing written objections. This is for people who had concerns. We didn't go around and solicit complaints because we felt that would be like trying to start a revolution or a movement. And we were very concerned to not do that. We wanted this to be peaceful. So I collected the signed forms that people had written out and submitted them to Mr. Taylor on October 31st, a week in advance of our meeting, so that he and Denny Drossos would have a week to review this information. We requested as a group that our resident managers not attend the meeting. Mr. Taylor then contacted me and asked me to arrange an off-property location for us to meet, which I did. On November 7th, a group of 25 to 30 Longview Hills residents attended the meeting with Phil Taylor and Denny Drossos at Atonement Lutheran Church in the Fellowship Hall. The meeting lasted, I think, about 2 hours. The tone of that meeting was absolutely respectful and professional. It was a good conversation. In that meeting, Mr. Taylor is the one who brought up the subject of park rules. Mr. Taylor told us that it was difficult to administrate a park that had several different sets of rules.
Say that again, please.
Mr. Taylor said that it's difficult to administrate a park with different sets of rules. I think we all heard this in the October 27th meeting as well. This came up again in the other meeting. He then told us that HCA would be implementing new rules in Longview Hills soon. He offered to email the rules from their Briarwood Park in Eugene to me. So I accepted, and those are the rules that a lot of you have already seen for that Eugene Park. He asked me to forward copies of those rules to people attending our meeting. So I did that. On November 9th, Phil emailed me the Briarwood rules and 6 other documents that I didn't know were coming. They were pertaining to RV storage, additional occupants, and caregiver approval procedure or process. I don't know what that is. In that email, he stated that HCA had taken over one of the clubhouse bulletin boards for their use and had already posted a couple of items there. I verified that that was indeed true. Mr. Taylor's email went on to say that the rules he sent me were their current rules. Those were his words. And they would need some modifications to fit Longview Hills. In reading those rules, we found that they would bring a substantial change to the Longview Hills rules that have been in place for over 20 years here. In comparing the rules of Longview Hills, I looked at a set from 1993 and a set from 2014, and there's no appreciable difference in that 21-year period in our rules that we've lived under. So we decided then, let's see, where did we go? So the HCA rules are more restrictive. They gave management far more control over us, our homes, and our space. Our initial response and the email that I sent to people was to wait to see what modifications HCA would make before we raised any objections, although I hadn't read the rules very clearly. In the meantime, one of our groups found the rules on HCA's website, so I decided to check the rules of their other Oregon parks to see how they differed from what we received from Phil Taylor. I downloaded copies of the rules from their parks in Dallas and Medford and found that they were essentially the same as Eugene. Even with the different physical characteristics in those 3 parks, the rules were essentially the same in all 3 parks. Now the parks differ somewhat from Longview Hills. There are single wides in there, there's skirting, there are issues that you would see in the Briarwood rules that would not pertain to us. However, in those 3 parks, there are also manufactured homes like ours, so it's a blended park. They have 2 other over 55 parks and a family park. So then we agreed at that point that these rules needed to be seen by everyone in Longview Hills. So this was about the 14th of November when this happened. We reached out to the Oregon State Tenants Association for manufactured homes to receive guidance on how to proceed because we really didn't know. 3 of us had separate conversations with their board president, Rita Lohberger, and I invited her here today to speak to us. On November 20th, we had a planning meeting to organize getting the word out for today's meeting. Our group donated paper, envelopes, labels, copying expense, and $100 for the postage for the letters that you received. One person took took the Longview Hills directory and created a spreadsheet for mailing labels. We were then given a copy of the Longview Hills spreadsheet, which we are very grateful for. 6 of us collaborated on writing the letter you received. The letter was sent 3 times to nearly a dozen people for editing and feedback before it was finalized. 2 of us stuffed and stamped envelopes. 166 letters were mailed on November 23rd, the day before Thanksgiving. This was a team effort by people in the community for the community. We are not a committee, nor are we claiming to speak on behalf of our neighbors or proposing anything other than a meeting today to educate ourselves. The purpose of our meeting today is for Longview Hills homeowners to be educated on our rights and responsibilities under Oregon statutes that govern parks like ours. It could properly be called a homeowner training event. We believe it's better for us to hear from someone who knows the law, has experience with these matters in her own park in Tigard, as well as experience in working with the legislature through her organization. This meeting is not about park management. It's not about the landlord, and for that reason, they have not been invited to speak or contribute to today's event. Although we haven't received new rules, we hope you'll agree that it's prudent for us to educate ourselves for when the time comes. We need to know our rights regardless of who the resident manager is, so this is not a discussion about these folks at all. On October 27th, the new landlord held a community meet and greet. In that meeting, Mr. Taylor was clear that they would not discuss specific issues during the social event. We as homeowners honored the social intent of the landlord's October 27th meeting. If there are any HCA representatives present here today, we ask that HCA and their representatives honor the intent of today's training event for homeowners. Again, we are not inviting management to speak at this meeting. Additionally, we have been in contact with an attorney who specializes in landlord-tenant law for parks such as ours. Should it be necessary, we can turn to him for additional guidance or representation. And now, I'd like to introduce Rita Lohberger, President of the Oregon State Tenants Association for Manufactured Housing. And I would ask that we keep the noise down because we have some folks with hearing aids who have a really hard time hearing when there's undertones in the room. Thank you.
I want to thank my hostesses that invited me today, because without their invitation, there is no way any of our directors are able to come to any of these communities to speak to you. We cannot simply go up to the door of anybody that lives in a manufactured home and start talking to them. It is by invitation only. I have received this.
They can't hear you.
Can you turn it up a little bit?
Turn it up a little bit. With me but 3 kids, I can do that, right? Okay. So I appreciate everyone showing up here today. Perhaps we can do some enlightenment here about what rights and responsibilities we do have as homeowners in these communities. That is what the OSTA organization tries to inform people about. This is why we like to have chapters of OSTA formed in each community, so we can stay in touch with you and keep you apprised as to any rule changes on a state level. I understand that we are basically meeting on the rule changes that are coming through. Know that I went on your website the other day, and I noticed that the Oregon Revised Statute 90.610, which is the one that we are discussing today, is what pertains to what we are dealing with, okay? When you come in here, and I myself am a 20-year-old homeowner in El Dorado Park there in Tigard, King City, so I speak manufactured housing. I understand where you come from. I have served on this OSTA board for 13 years. I have served on the national board and represent Oregon on the executive board level for the last 4 years. This gives Oregon a a very good standing within the United States as to how Oregon regulates their manufactured housing organizations. We have over 1,000 parks in Oregon, such as your community, okay? That is comprised of over 62,000 people that own their homes, that pay their taxes, and live in these communities. Therefore, 30-some years ago, Bill Keminar, when he was a legislative person, said, if you wish to pass laws that regulate the way your homes are regulated within these communities, you work through a coalition. You work with the owners, the managers, the senators, the attorneys, the state trainers, and your fellow representatives. Through this coalition, over the years, we have compiled Oregon State Statutes, Chapter 90. ORS Chapter 90. Any of you that have computers can bring this up. ORS Chapter 90. This can also be accessed through our website that Manufactured Housing has. That is MH/OSTA. I have this problem with my ears, like Joyce said. If there's background noise, they plug up on me. So then I can't hear anybody. I can only hear me, and you don't want that. So on this website, I noticed that, I don't know whether Phil had put this on, how long your website had been established, but it does quote 90.610. It tells how new rules, new changes to your contracts, to your leases, whatever you call them, can be made that has to apply to everyone in the community, okay? It has to be presented in writing. It has to be sent to each home, as well as posted on a door, an entry to your house, so everyone receives this notice at the same time. If they say you can only park on the streets, don't park on the streets between 10 and 7 in the morning, for an example. That has to go to everyone in the park as a change, because that could be a change to the way you agreed to sign your contract when you moved in here. When this is posted on your door, when you receive this in the mail, you have, by law, 30 days to evaluate that. The proposed change is also listed on your website that you can bring up on your computer. There is a form that has to be presented, and that has to give the date by which 51% or more of you residents have decided that you do not want that change to take place. A number of years ago in El Dorado, we were given that parking option. We have very narrow streets in our park. We looked at that rule change, and we said, we have narrow streets, and we have senior people. We want this particular law because those fire trucks, those EMTs, have to be able to access in the middle of the night. They can't keep going from door to door. Could you move your car? Could you move your SUV? We have to access our medical equipment to get to you or your neighbor. We let that rule change pass. Within 60 days after presentation, that rule went into effect. There were other rules and changes that they wanted to make that, oh, I don't have to yell anymore? Now I have to turn it down, right? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Ellen.
Okay, so the law reads under this 90.610, within this 60-day period, if you choose not to accept the those rule changes to your contract, to your lease, they must be petitioned down, one vote per household, and you would need 51% or more of the residents in the entire park to vote that down. This is what I understand is coming down the pike. So when you get these rule changes, that is going to change the way you have your lease agreed to. We have, I've heard you have, where they are now going to let one pet per household?
That's already been enacted
Okay,
for new tenants.
for new tenants, okay.
You just brought up something. What if can they have two contracts, so like the old, keep the old ones and the new ones get the new ones, or can they only have one?
You never have to sign another contract.
No, but I mean, the new tenants, will they get these new rules? But we don't get them, if we vote it down, right? Okay.
Right. We have under 90.412 what we call the waiver law. And if you have a couple dogs, and you've been here over 3 months, and they have accepted your rent for that period of time, that you are wavered in. I also rent from a California company. It's called CalM. Perhaps you have heard of it. We have quite a bit of publicity going up there in the Portland type area about the air conditioners that are coming out and the fences that are being ripped down and all the houses that are being painted one shade of beige. That they are trying to implement a number of those items, and we are saying it's not gonna happen. So we have that opportunity to pass that down. By 51%, we can petition down these changes.
Another question, so does it, like, we had a pet, and we signed a contract, so it's in writing. What if I had a pet and I didn't tell them about it, and they didn't know about it?
You're in trouble.
I'm in trouble, okay. I can keep my goldfish, okay?
I don't know. Oh, Fisher Iffy. I had a buddy rabbit that had to be approved by upper management one time. So this 3-month waiver falls under 90.412. If you have two pets, a goldfish and a dog, and they've accepted your rent for 3 months, that is wavered in.
That they knew about, right?
They knew about it. So there are things in this law that we have worked through the coalition. The coalition was established back in 97. Okay? 97. Bill Keminar, who was in the legislature at that time, said if we wanted any rules, any laws to be applied to manufactured housing, that we would have to work through a coalition. This coalition would be comprised of anybody that had any doings with manufactured housing. That's the owners, that's the trainers, that's the attorneys that regulate the law, et cetera, down the way. We would have to work together to present bills. For these last few years, every year, we have had a bill. And it has passed in the legislature. It has been voted into Chapter 90 law. When I met with Senator Devlin, who is my elected official, I met with him last Tuesday along with John Van Landingham, who is the head of the coalition, the moderator for the coalition. We said, Richard, for 20 years, you have sat on that floor, and for 20 years, you have voted these bills into law. This is what we want to work by. This is what we want the owners to acknowledge, that these are our rights under the law. In October, this last October, the landlords in Oregon got together and decided they were going to have a co-chair appointed. They appointed an attorney who does apartment law. Now, if anybody has ever lived in an apartment, they know that that law differs greatly from owning your own home. Then they went as far as saying, this attorney is going to tell you what you can place on the agenda. We were coming up with, we want enforcement of our Chapter 90 laws. They said, we will not discuss it. And with that, John and I got up from the table and we left. We have not been back to the coalition. The coalition does not exist at this point of time. So no bills will be presented this year. But as it happens, they have now found out that if there is no coalition, they also cannot pass bills. So guess who wants us back? We are willing to work with them, but they have to listen to both sides of the story. That's all we're asking. We want people to be able to live in the homes that they thought would be their last home, into the communities that they have sought out, to the homes that they like, the neighbors they like. These communities are neighborhoods. I'm Midwest people, okay? We call them neighborhoods. We call them communities out here. We do not use the T word when we discuss about our communities. These are not trailer parks. We are not mobile. And I would be the first one to rip faces when I hear trailer. I spoke to one of the editors of the New York Times a number of years ago, and he used that T word. And I said, I know it's much later at your place, over there in New York, but I says, out here in Oregon, we have a different time frame. I'm working on my first cup of coffee, and the T word really offends me. I says, I do not move my home. My home will be here forever, whether I will or not. So we call them manufactured or mobile home communities, and we do not move these homes. I got my other puppy. So this is the way that we can work with them, not with a bigger hammer, but with a common understanding that we are the ones that make their business what it is, and we're willing to work with them. But they also need to know that we're not an old folks' home, we're not an institution, we are not living under dictator-type law, that what we sign in our leases and our contracts are what we have agreed to. And if they want to change those, they need a majority vote.
How?
Or,
How do we notify them of our displeasure?
90.610.
No, do we send them a letter, do we have to hire
Do we
an
have to have
attorney?
like a petition that we go to house?
Can we have a committee?
When these are presented properly, they are not posted on some general location. They are mailed under 90.155. We're going back to Oregon State law
But how do we respond?
with a petition within 30 days by 51% or more of the residents saying they choose not to accept these rules.
So we go around the neighborhood and put it in writing and get 51%
have a
of the
petition.
people's signatures.
You have a petition that is passed to everyone in the community. It is their choice whether they wish to sign or not.
Now, how often can they do this? Can they do it every month until
Of
they
course
get
they
their way?
could. Of course they could, but if you vote it down, what would their need be to turn around the next month and do it again?
Can they do one rule at a time?
Or will they do a whole bunch in one?
I have no idea how Phil wants to handle
They have a
this.
choice.
They have a
They
choice.
have a
Jim, if you read in your rules and regulations, there is a section on proposed rule changes, and it tells you what you have to do.
So is there a special petition form that we have to create?
There is, that has been forwarded to your hostesses, and they have that. When we did this a number of years ago, we have a very large community, much like yours. We printed up 3 identical petitions. They gave the rule changes, and we had 3 different petition carriers that divided a third each on our part, so they were better able to meet that particular requirement within the 30-day period, because you're not gonna find Susie at home every first, second time you go, okay? It's dedication. You must get 1 signature from every household that wishes to vote those down.
And we have to make sure those people are on the lease? So how do we know that?
Question over,
Well, that's part of.
if a rule change isn't presented properly, as it's supposed to be, is it still enforceable?
Does everyone see it at exactly the same time? Does everyone understand this? How can it apply to the whole park when it is not presented properly under 90.610?
Okay.
On that form, it gives you a date by which you have to have that 51% turned in. It's in a form. It's in a state form.
Okay, we get it off the email, off of our computer, right?
Ma'am,
Right.
sounds like because of some certain requirements and stuff like that, would it be in our best interest, like form a committee that would be a liaison to make sure all these things are handled correctly?
I think what we did, we simply asked, because we had a large group like this also, and we asked who would be willing to pass a petition in their area, and we took names. Okay? You can only get 1 name per household, and it has to be an owner on the home.
Or maybe appoint block captains to go out and get the signatures. That's a good idea.
If you start fragmenting too much, then you're gonna have a situation. If you can keep it to 3 or 4 different people.
Somebody, when you, it's important that it's a person on the title of the.
Yes, I don't know if you have,
Not a title, oh, that's right, the title is to the owner of the home.
I don't know if you have renters within your homes. I have recently run into this, and that's a disaster. Our particular community will not let us have renters in our homes.
Do you have to petition each change one at a time, or can you lump them all
It
together?
depends upon how they've presented them.
And how about if they make changes that you agree with, you know, I can't think of one, but if they make something that you agree with, how can you like give them something so that they don't just keep fighting?
Okay, and
We can answer the question. Somebody was speaking, would they like to stand up so the rest of us can hear?
Excuse me, we can't hear your questions.
Okay.
Just repeat them.
My question was, is do we have to answer each change, make a petition for each one individually, or can we lump them together? And also, are there changes in here that we agree with, and how do we keep those in there if we agree with them? Sometimes it's good to give a little, take a little.
you would be acting as your own coalition type group, and how many would say, okay, well, we've got 35 over here that like this, but there's 58 over here that likes this one. I think you're gonna run into a bailiwick if they're presented. You understand bailiwick, is that? So what we did, we voted the entire amount down. In my community, we also have what we call a committee of 7, which takes longer for you to form. It would take probably about a month for you to form a committee of 7. But that would be a group that would be able to meet with management once a year, no more than twice a year. And you could handle these little loose end type things where you could discuss that. Okay? I can leave instructions about a committee of 7, but everyone in the community would be involved in that. The basics on a committee of 7 formulation would be that, first of all, I see you have a newsletter. So in a newsletter, you would ask for names of people willing to accept as a spokesperson position for people within their community to meet with management. The law reads once a year, no more than twice a year, for community events. Not when Sally's cat goes into Ted's yard next door. We aren't dealing with little things. We're dealing with community-wide things. Parking on the street overnight, potholes in the bottom of such and such a street, whatever. Large type issues like that, okay? These names that were submitted then would be put on a ballot with every household receiving a copy of that ballot, and say a time frame of a week or 10 days in which to cast your ballot for 7 of these people who would represent you to management for questions and concerns. But they can only meet once a year, no more than twice a year.
In Hawaii, right? With management, right?
With management, okay? When we meet with management, we met with the on-site manager as well as the regional manager. Okay? Then within 30 days, the managers would come back and say, okay, this is our budget for this year, this is what we're going to do for potholes. We are going to put up signs that you cannot park on the streets overnight. This will be done within 30-day period. That they will reply to you, at which time you can get this information out on your newsletter. And I love communities that have newsletters.
We're actually also setting up a website.
Wonderful, but not everyone has computers if you're like us.
Yeah, I don't.
So that's why we find that the newsletter works really great. So there's so many things that you can do within your community to keep it viable. And it's not always the same people that are on committee of 7. It's not always the same group that comes to coffee on Friday morning. But you can circulate around, you can work together as a community. And if you're like us, you've got these little grapevines that go around, okay? You know grapevines, okay. So, that's sort of the high spots. Is there anything that I have totally offended anybody in here?
Not offended,
Okay.
but I do have a question.
Okay.
It's specific to the RV parking. Not everybody here has RV parking, so would the vote to try to get 51% of the park still apply, or would it be 51% of the people that use the RV parking?
See, you're breaking down, because if Phil or your manager puts this under general rule change, that's exactly the way it's coming across, okay? You wouldn't have a select group. If they wanted to break it down and send a rule change to only those that were renting the RVs.
That's what they did.
RV spaces, that would be different. But when they lump sum, then everyone has a say in that, okay? So RVs are actually not manufactured housing. They
Right.
don't actually, this is what I've heard in the coalition for 13 years. RVs fall under rentals because they are mobile.
In the rules and regulations,
they're
they're,
tiny houses. Much like the tiny houses that still have wheels in them, okay? Those are mobile. Our homes are not mobile. So you have to break down what,
we're actually talking about the spots, not the RVs, because the spot, they're,
For the RVs.
right.
People who own
It's a community,
mobile RVs, but when they
it's
go
like the
camping,
clubhouse.
Go on a trip, that's what
I
the problem is.
we have that in our community too. They charge $75,
Thank you.
$80 a month to park an RV in our. Hey, I told you, we rent from Skyland. They're the big wannabes. They're right up there with ELS.
Devon
They're up there
Schindler was
with-
the only one up here that was smart enough to get it in writing and his RV space that was free. He's the only one that doesn't pay.
What we do, and we suggest that anybody that speaks with management for any change, any amendment to their personal, contract, get it in writing. I dealt with a regional manager when I first started out. He was starting out at the same time. He would say, sure, Rita, go ahead and do this. I said, I'm an old person, Steve. I says, you know, let's put it in writing so I actually can remember what you said and when you said it. Send me an email. Send me a postcard. Send me something in writing. But let's be on the same ground with this. Callahan is notorious for not documenting.
Does Phil have any association with justice?
No, he is an owner of a park. He's with the Oregon Owners Organization. He also serves on the college. I've worked with him. Okay? So I've got his email too.
Where you have new tenants signing different contracts, for example, the one pet now, and there's other people that have a different provision or different. If they try to put a rule change that says one pet, can the people that have already signed a contract agreeing to one pet, can they sign a petition objecting to it? They are renters, but it doesn't necessarily apply to them. Not renters, but they're, yeah, according to the contract, it's called renters in each unit. But can they object even though the provision wouldn't apply to them?
New owners, moving in can have their contract written any way Phil wants it written.
Right, but can they be part of the 50, they presumably are part of the 51% or 49%, so.
They would need to list on this how many houses are available for this rule change. If they want to go into detail on this, as they should, the management would point out what homes would be approached for these possible rule changes, okay?
So they wouldn't be part of that change then?
New people coming in would have to adhere to whatever they have signed on that lease. People that are here and already have 2 or 3, if you throw in a goldfish, okay? And the rent has been accepted for 3 months, falls under that waiver. We called it grandfather for a number of times, for a number of months, and Callahan had a real problem with grandfather. They didn't like grandfather. They wanted to bring in a 1953 civil code from California that read that the leaseor did not have to adhere to any grandfather or waiver lease of any tenant. And I said, you cannot bring California law across the state line. All we want is for them to listen and to adhere, thank you. Ooh, I needed something else for lunch. To adhere to the state laws that we have on the records, and 90.410 is that waiver under Oregon
I think what we're getting at is it's kind of like boiling the frog, that as you have a new one come in and sign a new contract, their position is, why should I vote no on something that I already agreed to? It gets harder and harder to stop a change that's gonna be coming down the road. Because they've already signed a new contract and agreed to that.
What management needs to do is have the number of the houses, or the house numbers that these rules would apply to. This is where that petition would need to go. Brand new people right off the street, for goodness sakes, have already agreed to this because it's probably in their contract.
And also, it's my understanding that even if you have the waiver, if you paid the 3 months and they've taken it, if they propose a rule change after that, that does pass by this, that could change that waiver. So that people who have that waiver should know that they need to vote on that petition.
What I think he's saying, let's say we have 100 people, and we have old thing, but all the rest of them are under the new law. He can just send that out to that, and the new ones say, well, why don't we just sign it all in so everybody's on it? See,
You don't have that many new people in here.
no, not right now, but in the future, if he wants to get it done, he can eventually do
You
it.
are going to get 51% of new people in here. We have turnovers too, but nothing that many.
But I think that's what I'm concerned about.
Everyone, new contracts can be written in any way they want, and new people coming on site will have to adhere to what they sign.
But the vote, this vote really only pertains to the old people, not the new people. Only the,
Needs to be listed on the form then when he sends it out.
but if he doesn't send it out, then we're stuck.
Then he's not presenting it under
Oh, good,
90.61.
well, that's what I wanted to know. He has to do it.
Yeah.
Got it.
If you're one of the old people here, old group here.
I'm an old people,
I'm old
okay?
people too, and, one of the new rules says that, they can come in, when you go to sell your house, they can come into your home and tell you, well, you're not gonna approve this unless you pull your fences down, unless you make a 6-foot hole, or whatever, close up your pet door, whatever the rule is. I mean, is that going, I mean, are we have to go along with that? I mean, we're already here, we haven't signed any agreement to that kind of stuff, but now this new rule says, this is the new rule. I mean, what?
There is a page on my contract from 20 years ago that says that a new owner has to do this, and this within a certain time frame. You need to replace the broken window, you need to, that is why we advise new people to get inspections done to these homes, okay? A lot of times in a senior park, you will find that residents are transferred into RV, into rehab type places. And at that point of time, they do not have the money to repaint their house, to put in vinyl windows. They cannot tell you how you have to upgrade that house, because a house does not have to be brought forward more than the year of the code of manufacture. I had a manager that would not sell a home in the park after the fellow passed away, and required his ex-wife to replace all the windows in that house before she could sell it. I said, you can't do that. She says, but those are not approved windows. I says, those windows have been replaced since the house was purchased, and I says, you cannot bring it up to coding today because it must only meet the year of the code of manufacture. They cannot require you to keep upgrading your house. If it is in disrepair, yes, but they cannot say, you have to put new siding on that house, or you have to replace all those windows. They cannot come in your house unless that has been turned over to them. They cannot inspect your house.
That's one of the
That is your home. If they sell your home, if it has been abandoned, if it has been turned over to them to sell, then they may come in and check. But otherwise, if you choose to sell your home, or if you have a real estate person